Our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by our friends at Zapper, the world's leading augmented reality platform and creative studio, with over 11 years of experience working with the world's biggest brands through Zapper Creative Studio. Zapper also has an award-winning web AR platform, ZapWorks, that lets you create your own mobile AR magic. Finally, check out their Zap Box, the most affordable mixed reality headset on the planet. Start creating AR over at zap.works or talk to them about your next AR project at zapper.com. Good morning, everybody. It's October 14th, 2022. I'm here with Ted Schilowitz for This Week in XR. Thanks for joining us on a newsy, busy week. Ted's in a hotel room somewhere in Florida for corporate meetings and is going to run out in about 15. And then I have Lucas Martell joining me. He's the CEO of Mighty Coconut, the company behind Walkabout Mini Golf. They just launched two new courses, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and one based on the Labyrinth movie. So I'm looking forward to that conversation, but let's start talking faster because we've got a lot to cover this week, Ted.
Sounds
first
good.
of all, Paramount Plus involved with Meta on, the announcement on Tuesday. And I'm interested in hearing what you're going to do with Meta, but most of all, you saw the new headset, the Quest Pro, a long time ago, and said nothing to me.
Yeah, well,
you are very good at keeping secrets. I don't know if that's one thing about our relationship. I'm not sure I like it.
Part of my dual life that I have to ride, being a podcast co-host as sort of my secondary life.
So, okay, so come out with it. Tell us what the experience is.
Well, first of all, even before we do that, you're going to have a good guest on today. Mighty Coconut is a very cool company, and I have played the new Jules Verne 20,000 Leagues Under the Walkabout Golf VR, and it's a lot of fun. They do a lot of really good stuff with physics and like air tunnels and things blowing around. You move around really nice. I'm very impressed with how they create these worlds, and people.
It's amazing. They could hang you off the side of a cliff, pointing you down at a 90-degree angle, in these Escher-like impossible places.
Yep.
Yet the physics of the game is always consistent and just right.
Yes. So I'm impressed by them, and you and I will have to hop in together in the next couple of weeks, but it's good.
Yeah, I would love to do that with him. Maybe we can film it as a special episode.
Absolutely. I think we should totally do that. On the big topic du jour, the all things Meta announcement, which you and I had a little pre-conversation about this, and I was actually more impressed than I thought I was going to be at the overall cadence and touch point of the overall presentation, where they took about 90 minutes to kind of walk through everything. There was a lot of stuff, but they did a pretty good job of avoiding kind of the noise level and just making their forward press and showing this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is how we're doing it. And then I'll let you comment on that, and then I'll talk about.
Well, I mean, what a story! What a story! Larger than life character in Mark Zuckerberg, taking a swing that no corporate titan or anyone else would take. This is an Elon Musk size swing.
Yeah.
I don't think Mark is likable or a good actor, and I don't think he should make it. It was less about him than last year's. I will grant you that, but there is an inherent fakiness in his sincerity that just brings to mind how untrustworthy this company is. And I'm sorry, it's like I'm like a lover in a bad relationship. I mean, they have lost my trust, and I'm not quite sure what they're going to have to do to get it back as a company as a whole. I mean, there's this duality in me in that I love VR, I love the Meta Quest. I can't believe that somebody is doing this. Yet at the same time, I really question some of their motives and morality, and I'd like to be proven wrong. But every time I try to be proven wrong and I try to, be a cheerleader, I get hammered by some crazy event that you couldn't even predict. Although now I think I'm getting better at predicting, but I don't want this to be a negative thing. I thought what they were showing us is we spent $10 billion.
Yeah.
And we built something really, really amazing.
Yeah. And it's interesting that your perspective and my perspective, usually we're very much aligned on things, but occasionally we're not, which is good. Obviously two different people with different opinions. I actually thought, as compared to the last few Connects and certainly the last virtual ones, this was markedly better. I think Mark, for whatever reason, put a lot more energy into trying to be likable and trying to connect a little bit. And I actually thought it was better. Not perfect. Look, I'm an Apple sort of, ethos guy for my whole life. So when you watch someone at the level of Steve Jobs do it, no one can ever do it that good. Yeah. But I did think that they put real effort and real concern and kind of took the feedback that it was very stiff and very robotic in the last couple of years, and they made a very significant effort.
I have no doubt the guy is making a big effort.
Yeah, because so maybe I give them more of a benefit of the doubt than.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he's one of the richest men in the world. You live kind of in a bubble, right, at that point. So anyway, let's get on with the hardware.
But the actual hardware. Let's talk about
the Quest Pro.
Right. So what used to be called Project Cambria, because of some of the development work that I do with some of our partners, I had a chance to wear the prototype versions and was dutifully impressed by it. I mean, the high fidelity color mixed reality component is good. The comfort is good. The fact that you can kind of sort of see your outside world in the reel, and then they've got these little snap-on kind of magnetic sides is a very clever concept. I thought, and truthfully, I didn't know what the actual final price point was going to be. I knew it was going to be probably around $1,000. The fact that it's $1,500 is very interesting to me because they're clearly targeting a non-price sensitive customer, right? They're marching into enterprise.
Well, that's what we predicted. I mean, it's funny. I wanted to bring up, I watched it with my class because Tuesday is a teaching day at Chapman. So I, killed two birds with one stone. I gave them a test and then I watched this with them. And one of the young women in the class said something really interesting. Who is this for? Why are they doing this?
Right.
And my answer was, they have a few audiences here that they're addressing, and you are not one of them. They're addressing, of course, their investors and shareholders. They're addressing their employees. They are addressing their developers and business partners like you to try and give you a larger picture than just the project that you're working on. Right. And then they're trying to show the industry how they're spending $10 billion and where there is opportunity. Yeah. And I think it was effective in that. I think the reaction to it by non-pros, which is a lot of the noise we're hearing on Twitter, is really irrelevant. Okay, you can't afford $1,500, but let's go back in the distant past 5 years ago, where people spent way more than $1,500 to get into VR.
Sure.
I had to buy a gaming PC that was VR capable. I fortunately got my hands on a $600 Vive kit.
Yep.
But that was almost $2,000. So I think people who care about VR will buy the headset. How big is that group? Probably 1 million people.
Right.
1 million people at $1,400, $1,500 starts to be a real number. Yeah. And they can't keep subsidizing the headset and spending $1 million on $100 million on advertising. So, but again, it is for business customers. They said it 100 times.
They said it 100 times. And
so I think that is good positioning for it. I mean, this is kind of on them to make a go of B2B, but they trotted out Satya Nadella and Julie from the CEO of Accenture. And, those were pretty powerful endorsements, I thought.
Yeah, and legitimate. They were talking about real use cases and real value. I thought the most interesting is when Satya comes out, because they do have a program that moves into head-worn compute, right? With obviously the HoloLens and what they did in sort of the earlier stages of VR that didn't quite work for them on their Microsoft sort of Windows platform for VR. But the fact that they see that that's a potential valid partnership and they like the level of the hardware and they like where it's going is a pretty good indication that they're realizing the ecosystem. I think maybe the biggest open question for me, Charlie, and I think you said, from the Twitter reaction, do you just think that the gaming community is just going to balk at that price point? They obviously that's their biggest addressable market.
I think everybody will want one, right, and they can't afford it, but that's the way it goes. I mean, I think Meta has been very clear in their messaging.
Yeah.
I just don't think on social media they get the benefit of the doubt. I mean, they didn't get the benefit of the doubt from the press this week.
Right.
I mean, I put a bunch of it in because in the story because there was so much of it, but it's like that old meme, leave Meta alone. I mean, haven't they been beaten down enough their stock price?
Well, yeah, of course.
I mean, and also it's unimaginable what it must feel like to be working at Facebook right now.
Right.
Or Instagram. You must feel like Mark Zuckerberg doesn't care if you drown and your stock is way underwater. So the company culture there cannot be good. And so it may be good at Meta, but at the other 3/4 of the company, it's challenging.
Right, it's challenging.
It's really challenging for them right now. And ironically, they're still going to make a bucket of money. They can more than afford the VR that they're doing. It's just not going to produce a lot of shareholder returns. So the stock is getting hammered, but that affects the employees.
Right. So you either have to.
I mean, as I said, great story. As a writer, you could not make up this stuff. And I thought the other thing about Connect that was really good was the breadth of it. If you want to know what Meta is doing, here's what it is. They, didn't keep a lot of secrets.
Right.
They talked a lot about avatars. And they talked about it in the context of business. They think business meetings in VR will be better with better avatars. So the avatars are getting legs. There's face tracking, which is a weirdly controversial feature. But it animates the avatars so much more accurately. You raise your eyebrows, you smile a little bit. Those visual cues are super important in personal communication. And it's actually a reason people don't like conference calls and even Zoom. So, I mean, certainly as a professor, I can tell you looking at people in the eye who are in sort of the audience or the room with you is very, very different than being on a Zoom. So I don't think they're, the question, as always, is, are they too early? But I mean, the timing of these things is impossible to master. But again, they're making a lot of money on these businesses that have been battered in the financial markets and in the press, but are still used by 2 billion people. So
and you're bringing up a lot of really good points. I mean, if you look at the strategy, they're all in on the concept of presence. They're all in on the evolution of the compute platform, that we're going to move past the flat screen. We're going to evolve and find our way into more advanced, more exotic screen usage. And presence is this big bet that Meta is making. And they are doing their best to sort of ignore the current state of the market and the current state of the prediction that their stock keeps going down as they take a bigger bet on the future.
There's so much of that is Schadenfreude.
Right.
So much of that is people delighting in the misfortune of Facebook, again, possibly, at their own hand.
It's a big bet, right?
Yeah. So there was other news.
There's a couple other smaller things cooking, right, that we should cover.
On a different, we got to take what the week gives us, but in a different week, they would have been gotten more attention. Dynamo, a company from Portugal, got $7.1 million. They make 3D avatars out of 2D photos. I think we've seen that before from one of our favorite companies, Spatial. But they obviously have a new twist. They sent me actually a 3D model that they had made from my profile picture. And I have to say it was disturbingly unflattering.
Unflattering.
And then there's a little company called Orama VR that's creating a platform for medical professionals to create bespoke training platforms.
Right.
Presumably, there's some kind of workflow that results in a VR experience. So
it's something we're going to have to dig more into, because you and I are both very interested in this. And there's a lot of end user end creation, but the idea of building a creation system specifically for that vertical is kind of an interesting curiosity to me. So we'll keep a close eye on that.
So despite all the hard work by the U.S. Army and Microsoft to promote IVAS, the report came out. And
not flattering.
It was not flattering. It was didn't contribute to soldiers' ability to complete their mission. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, this was something we were very much worried about,
Yeah,
knowing
I just think there's not a lot of technology I'd want in my face to depend on under the most rugged, terrifying conditions a man can know. So
I think
it's super ambitious.
Yeah, it's super ambitious. If you look through the lens of what the industry of flight and flight simulation and heads-up displays has been, it's an extraordinarily mature industry, all right, of putting into the fighter pilot's field of view on their helmet when they're in the cockpit. So the idea of transporting that into the field is kind of the right aspiration, but you and I were very worried that they wouldn't actually be able to pull that off in the first gen.
I think it's really hard with the state of the technology right now. I don't doubt that they can get this right, but it may take way longer than they thought. But the Army seems like they're all in. I just don't know that they're going to get funding while that money could be used to buy bombs to protect Ukraine. So, well, listen, it's 8:15. You have a hard stop.
I gotta go.
I think it's fair for us to tell everybody that Ted is an executive at Paramount Global, which is in business, and Ted has gotten an early look with Meta. So, keep that caveat in mind. Nonetheless, I think Ted is a great partner and very open-minded, and we don't promote his corporate interests very often, but in this case it was part of the announcement, so I think we need to mention that again. Anyway, it must be exciting. Ted's in Florida at big corporate meetings where he's a honcho and everybody looks to him for wisdom, so it's a pleasure to be your partner. Get out of here.
We'll talk next week and enjoy your time in underwater VR.
I'm going to bring him in so I'm not all alone here.
All right, see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Hey, Lucas, are you there?
Yep, I am.
So for all our planning, Ted had to slip out before the interview, but I still really want to do our original idea, which was to get with you inside of the Jules Verne experience and interview you while we play and hop around inside. So you can give us a little tour. We'll do it as a special episode. I've got somebody with a PC, you have crossplay, and I have somebody with a PC VR to capture. So it could turn out good. Anyway, but let's talk now. Since we've got you here, we've got you scheduled, and I'm a fanboy, as is Ted. As is Ted. But I love your ambition. The company's called Mighty Coconut, which how can you not love a mighty coconut? So it sort of expresses what you put across so elegantly and honestly and authentically in the games, which is, a sense of fun and not taking yourself too seriously, but while making, substantially great game software.
Thanks. Yeah, we like to think of ourselves as like really, really way too serious about mini golf and VR and
it's funny. It's funny, but but it's great. And there is what I love is how you and your artists keep challenging yourselves.
Yeah, we take it really seriously, and even though yes, it's a mini golf game, a lot of the folks that we have working on this are top of their craft. They've been doing this for 20, 30, even 40 years. And so this is sort of like this feels like kind of being able to kind of be on the playground a little bit, and every we get to kind of keep coming up with new worlds that we would never get to do in other games, or you would have to spend 4 or 5 years living in that world. And it's so fun to be able to kind of like invent this little microcosm.
Well, I thought the Jules Verne experience, or game, or course, I should say, the Jules Verne course, I think is one of your most ambitious, as was the Labyrinth course right before it. So you're really sort of upping the level in every course. I also loved about Jules Verne that I didn't have to play. Right, I suddenly figured out, I could just teleport around here and take a look at the art and explore. 'Cause it really is the kind of, I also have realized I can do that on the other courses too. And so, one of the things about Walkabout that's great is you can just go explore. Sometimes you don't have to play the game. So, and it's also sometimes I'm playing the game and I look around and I say, oh my God, I'm so into the game. I didn't realize that I'm like in an Escher drawing.
Yeah. I mean, it's so, one of the things that I think that we found is sort of like that it started off as sort of like mini golf, and a lot of those first courses are really centered around the mini golf. But then we found that the worlds that we were creating were just so again, they're these nice size. They're not sort of, they're big enough
Right.
that you can actually get around and explore. And we have definitely added a lot of mechanics like the fox hunts and the lost balls and everything to help encourage people. But we've even started like especially in the later courses, just the number of Easter eggs and little things we put around the course that even if you're just flying
Right,
around
to
checking
reward
out
the
something
people who
new.
are looking around. I think that's a great
Exactly.
feature.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
also, you have people take it very seriously in their tournaments and ladders and
Oh yeah, yeah.
companies doing, team building in there. I mean, it's great.
It's such a wide variety of people who play it for all sorts of different reasons. I mean, some people play it socially, some people play it almost to meditate, because there's a lot of courses that are just very calm and chill, and there's definitely a Zen quality of perfecting
Yes.
your game.
Yeah, it's true.
And yeah, some very hardcore people, very hardcore players. And it's funny, whenever we do anything that even like touches, like if we're adding a feature to the physics or something, we have to be so careful, because if the slightest thing happens, if it feels like the grass is half a millimeter too long, people will pick it up and notice.
It still suffers from being early stage VR. So sometimes you're standing over the ball and it puts. You haven't done anything. It just kind of jumps in your hand and hits the ball. So, but that's mini golf. So I think in the context of mini golf, you kind of accept it, because just random weird things are going to happen that prevent you from getting the best score. But it's a problem every golf game has, right? All the other golf games have the same problem of it loses hand tracking and starts thinking for itself.
Yeah. And one of the features that we added is grip to putt. So it won't activate until you hold down the grip, which helps a lot with that. But then also I'm really hoping that where they're going with the new controllers, where there's actually inside out.
Yeah, it's the headset. It's not you.
Yeah, exactly. You can only do so much of it. But yeah, I really feel like that's the direction that it has to go, where each controller needs to be independently tracked. And I think that's going to, we're on that path that it's just going to get better and better for the next several years.
So here's a question I wanted to ask you, just because I know you're an artist and you've been doing this for quite a while. What's the deal with legs? Is it a big deal or not a big deal? And you're also an animator, so can they really be animated? Aren't they going to look like weird, like a Scooby-Doo cartoon or something?
I mean, it's one of those things that it feels like getting legs in there. So actually maybe a good example of that.
I mean, isn't this one of these things that people want, but when they get it, they're going to find out it didn't really matter?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that people who aren't as used to looking at it sort of like kind of get weirded out by not seeing a character with legs. But until you actually get full tracking, then there's also some weird stuff. Like a lot of people play our game sitting down. And then you see people sort of like, I mean, there's all sorts of weird things that can happen. And so we also found that there was a lot of benefit to not even showing the torsos, because that's something that we could show. But it tends to just, especially when you have a lot of people in a room, people tend to block the view, or it's just a lot of people standing around, and really like the head is enough, especially when people start flying.
Well, Carmack went into that yesterday. If you listen to unscripted part of,
I haven't got a chance to listen to that yet, but this afternoon I can't wait to dig in, because I always love his big unscripteds.
Yeah, and he was saying that, and again, this is developer talk. He was saying too many polygons are being wasted on this avatar thing. Yeah. And it is diminishing the quality of the worlds, and it is limiting the number of simultaneous uniques that can be inside of a world. And in an instance. So I think that's goes directly to what you were just saying, Lucas.
And that's actually exactly why. So in our game, we have our own avatars. We're not using the Oculus or Meta avatars just because they're so heavy. There are some ways of optimizing them, but we just found that for as big of the worlds as we were trying to create, we just really needed to optimize that. And we wanted our avatars to feel like they were part of our low poly world and that the aesthetic fit. So it just really made sense for us to sort of roll our own avatar solution. We had also done that while it was still in an earlier phase, so they've come a ways, but yeah, they're just really, really heavy for if you're trying to get 8 people in a room.
Yeah. Although there's a new API with Facebook avatars and game engines. So you can bring the avatars in more easily. But again, it goes to that polygon question of, well, is it worth it to bring those heavy ass assets into our game? And, it's an environmental game. So you don't have a lot of polygons to waste. And
one of the other big things with us is that we are a cross-platform, you can play in on anything, Steam, you know.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
but
play on
the
PC Quest and-
new API for Avatar from Meta Avatar
oh yeah,
is supposed to do that as well. I'm not suggesting that you go to it because, as you said, you would be taking on a much heavier external product. So the other thing, of course, I'm sure people who are listening and are fans of Walkabout want to know is what's next. What kind, and let me position this as just a development question. I mean, you must have a bunch of ideas bouncing around the office that are kind of, you know, what we should do.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff coming. So courses, we've really sort of like, we're getting into our stride with the course, and it feels like each one is bigger and better. And I wouldn't say that it's all just sort of like bigger and better. Like, we're finding, let's do something different with each of these things. And Nautilus was actually a great example where because it was so small and you were on the submarine, it allowed us to do some really cool things. Like, without spoiling it, the intro is something that we had never done before, and that was just a really nice.
Well, your background is as an animator, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you love that stuff. That comes naturally, right?
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that we always say is sort of like delight and surprise. What are the things that we can put in here that it's not just about showing off technically, but it's actually going to catch people by surprise. And it's not just doing more and more of the same and doing it bigger. It's like, oh, well, yeah, we did Labyrinth was giant. The fact that you could walk around that entire labyrinth was a really cool thing, in addition to all of the licensing and the character work and all that. But so for this one, let's go in a very different direction. And this one was all about sort of density. When you're in that sub, just every single inch of it is just fully, you know, decorated and just has so much storytelling in there, just because we had crammed so much in that we had so much more ability to fill it as full as we wanted to do. So yeah, so getting back to your question though, yeah, we are starting to play around with a lot more mechanics. We have a lot of courses. I think we've got another 12 that are in active development right now. We're also adding a lot more features, and we're also coming to more platforms, including, I know I've talked before about mobile, but we do have an AR mixed version of the game, essentially, that you could play on your phone with just fully crossplay with VR. So the fact that you could have, if you have a headset, you could still be playing with other people who might not. And we think that's going to be a really,
that would be good. So you could really kick their ass easily.
Yeah, it's similar, but it's different. You actually play it by physically putting, by physically moving the device. We've even had some people attach it to selfie sticks in our beta group.
And that makes so much sense. Yeah,
it sort of becomes this little window that you're looking through. So it's surprisingly,
it's a very limited field of view immersive experience.
Yeah, and we've done a few things to help with the field of view, but yeah, sort of like some people call it monoscopic VR has been like the really like niche term for that. But yeah, it's sort of like it's VR, but it's just on the phone. It's like this little window that you're looking at the world through.
I thought it was a very shrewd decision to look to public domain intellectual property as the basis of a new game. So you don't have the limitations that you have working with a property like Labyrinth, yet you have an overall outline of a place that people know enough, you know, because the role of nostalgia in mini golf is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, so I have one for you that you can add to the dozen in development. Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz is
the original book. Yeah.
And all those Disney fairy tales are, you know, Cinderella with the mice and the pumpkins and things that change into other things, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, the mice become horsemen. And so anyway, I just putting that in the corner of your brain, royalty free.
We're definitely, we're liking those. We're enjoying working with some of the, I mean, all of the people that we've licensed courses for have been great to work with, but it is nice to do something that when you take an IP like Jules Verne and you could sort of like, and I feel like with the next two Jules Verne courses, we even go further with the sort of like, okay, here was the story, but let's do something inspired by that story that still feels like, oh, it's still sort of like true to what it was, but it's also sort of playing into, you know, taking it in some new directions and sort of like, kind of having fun with what that idea might be. And that's the great thing about all of the fairy tales and stuff like that as well, is that you could take like, oh yeah, well, like if we did
Jack and the Beanstalk, or something, right?
Like exactly. You don't have to do the classic version that everyone thinks, or you can start there, but then you put twist to it.
When you think about it, one of the things you do so well is play with scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jack and the Beanstalk is all about scale.
Yeah, exactly. That the floorboards, that you're like falling into cracks between the floors, and yeah,
exactly. So
Mhm.
lots of good stuff out there. It must be so much fun. It's like a little Disney shop where you're storyboarding and spitballing and
Yeah,
playing off each other.
exactly. That's exactly how we're running it.
So interesting because it flows directly out of your experience as an animator.
Mhm.
Can you tell us your story? I mean, I think probably many people, especially my students and younger people, want to know how they become you.
I have a very weird, I'll try to give the not crazy long version of it, but I was a music major in school. I'm a sax player. And I kind of thought that I was going to be getting into like sound for film, but then I accidentally found myself. So I was working in a post studio, but they needed more help on the like the color and post-production side of things. So I started off actually as a colorist. One of my first big projects was Sin City, helping out with that one.
Cool.
So I kind of got into the image side of things, and I was really liking that. And so I wanted to learn animation, but at the time, this would have been like 2005. There weren't really many resources out there. Since then, there's been so many schools that have come along. So, but anyways, I want to learn animation. At the time, the only way was to sort of like buy some books and just sort of like teach yourself. So I did a short film called Pigeon Impossible that was 6 minutes long. It took me 5 years. And then finally, when that was done, did the festivals. And then ultimately I ended up selling it to Fox. And that was the basis for Spies in Disguise, the last Blue Sky movie, the one with Will Smith and Tom Holland. Will Smith turns into a pigeon. That came out in 2019, like literally like 3 months before the lockdown happened. So, and then since then, yeah, I had been working mostly in the animation, directing, producing, writing side of things. Pitching projects constantly, always writing new stuff. The studio itself, Mighty Coconut, started off as mostly a work for hire animation studio.
Are you still doing that on the side, or?
I still have several animation projects that are with various folks, or that I'm just sort of holding on to for the right time. But we are the studio itself, Mighty Coconut. We're not doing work for hire stuff. We're only doing our own originals. And right now we are really focused on Walkabout, and we've got a couple of other projects that we're starting to play with that are all still in that game XR sort of space. But yeah, so we've sort of like pivoted to doing just 100% our own stuff. And yeah, now learning how to be a game studio coming from the animation world is a bit of a unique challenge.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Yeah. Making some mistakes and just sort of, hiring really, really good people and kind of figuring out as you go. There's a lot of similarities, but also everything just works fundamentally different, and even the business side of it. But luckily we,
well, you must be one of those 33 games that's made over $1 million. They were talking about the revenue, which, 1.5 billion dollars over, I guess, a little over 2 years at this point.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. That's real money.
The fact that VR is a really, really good time. And I will say that developing, especially for the Quest, for standalone VR is definitely a challenge. It requires a decent number of, you need to really understand some of the deeper stuff in terms of how the tech is working under the hood. But if you know that, or especially for folks who have done mobile VR, and especially standalone VR is a really, really good place for indies like us who are wanting to do something, but you're not necessarily competing against AAA games that are spending 100, 200, even $300 million on a single game. So,
and they have the wherewithal to market those.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's still, I think that
some of those games cost like $200 million.
Yeah.
It's like a movie.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're getting into the P&A behind all of that as well. Then it's sort of like double it easily. So it's just
So do you have your creative people together in like a bullpen, or is everybody remote at this point?
We're all remote. We do technically have an office, but it's more just sort of like when people come into town, we kind of get together there, and there's a couple people who work out of there. But in general, we're all remote. We do everything over Slack and video. And the nice thing is that being a multiplayer game, and even doing a lot of our development in VR, is that we do meet up, but virtually. So ironically, we're one of like the best use
And
cases for
what platform do you use for that kind of collaboration?
We use Gravity Sketch as a world building tool that does have some multiplayer, multi-user stuff, but a lot of it is actually meeting up in our own game. So much of what we do are play tests and reviews, but we'll just actually hop into the game, go into the level, and it's almost like going to like a location scout for a film. You're literally with your putter, you're just pointing, oh, we need to change this over here, and oh, that mountain right there, we need to drop this down so that we get a sight line to the thing. So it's almost sort of like, doing like I said, doing a location visit for a film or something like that. So it's very cool, and the fact that we're a multiplayer game just makes it so perfect for what we're doing.
Have you thought about expanding the world? I know you have like a practice putting green and a darts game, and I understand those things are popular.
Yeah. We're definitely adding quite a few more features and more game modes. A couple of the other upcoming courses also feel like there might be some elements that now that we're sort of getting those systems in place, it feels like, oh, this might even be a mode that we can sort of like activate for the rest of the game or something like that.
It just opens you up to memberships and other means of recurring revenue. I think that's one of the nice things about your business is that, you have recurring revenue, and most video games, you buy it and you get a number of hours out of it. And that's the bargain between the consumer and the game maker, producer.
Yeah, it's very.
And so this is a little different than that. Like it's, I don't know what, a $12.95 to walk in the door, and you get a bunch of courses with that. And then if you want more courses and the new courses and the more advanced courses, you got to pay $3 or $4. And so first of all, everybody's got $3 or $4.
Yeah.
That's not a lot to ask. And second of all, you're offering something really valuable in return. And people know what its value is because they've already paid you money. So I think that's just a fantastic business plan where you really have the opportunity to turn a lot of players into members. And, it's actually sort of what's happened with Pro Putt, now Golf Plus.
Yeah.
So I just think both of these kinds of sports games have tremendous opportunity to build community and monetize that community in a way that is recognized as helpful by the consumer.
Yeah, and I think that especially with the price that we're charging everything for those add-on courses, it feels like it's sort of like what you would see in more of like, honestly, it's almost more like the old school, like DLC sort of like expansion pack. Like it's not just cosmetics.
Yeah, well, that's what they've done with Beat Saber, right? So people are used to buying music. So
you get new content, and with us, it's sort of like each course that we launch is sort of like opening up a little new sort of a new little theme park sort of within the game. And so far everyone has been super like all of our players have been really great about getting like, oh, it's like that we wouldn't be able to keep making courses without a little bit, but it feels like everyone is really sort of like contributing and helping give us what we need in order to keep making these and to keep making them even bigger and better than we are.
Well, congratulations on the Jules Verne course. It really, I played it multiple times. I've explored the submarine. I just think it's one of the best done things in VR so far.
Oh, thank you.
It's kind of crazy that it's in the context of a mini golf game.
Yeah.
So,
mini golf
Ted and I definitely have to
thread.
Yeah, Ted and I definitely have to get in that game and film it with you. So we'll try and make that happen in the next couple of weeks. But congrats to you and the team. And thank you for coming on the podcast this week. I really enjoyed getting to know you.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Take care.
All right, everybody. Have a great weekend.